markets as well as investment information. And in the last 2 weeks, it's been an interesting ride for the country. If you've been following the show for quite a while, before the elections, I did, for those of you that have been following the show and that know me, this is my daily bread, as it were. This is my bread and butter, analyzing the Nigerian economy, Africa, everything concerning economy though. And I've always said it that there need to be bold reforms taken by any administration, and I do not envy the next president of Nigeria. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu did say, don't pity me, don't sympathize with me, I asked for the job. What we've been seeing in the last 2 weeks, does it really indicate that this presidency is ready for the job? And indeed, Nigeria is ready for business. Yesterday, we saw that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu appointed 8 out of 20 advisors, special advisors. The National Economic Council was also inaugurated yesterday. That will be chaired by the Vice President. That will be different from the NEMT, that is the Nigerian Economic or National Economic Management Team, that we hope will be constituted soon. Nigerians are also expecting the president to bring forward his cabinet. Who are those that will be working with him? But just like Reuters said, I don't know if any of you have seen that Reuters article, but if we have it now, we can show it. But if not, we can show it later, where they did tag Tinubu, Baba go fast. It's not Baba go slow. That's it. Tinubu is Baba go fast. Tinubu stunts weary investors with quick reforms. What a dramatic departure from Baba go slow. Was Buhari Baba go slow or Baba no movement at all? But of course, director, don't distract me. My director is saying, okay, people could be saying it's Baba no movement at all. But of course, just like Tinubu has been tagged Baba go fast, President Buhari was tagged Baba go slow. It took him 6 months to get his cabinet on board. And we've seen what has happened in the last 8 years. You are here in the country. I am here in the country. Many Nigerians are living in droves. The popular parents, Jackpa. Many years ago, we had Andrew wants to check out. We're seeing another version, triple it right now, because I also read a report, I think about 52% of Nigerian professionals want to leave the country. So the part of the onus of this administration is to restore confidence and tell Nigerians that indeed we are ready to work. We are indeed ready for business, especially to attract FDI into the country and FPI. And the next few months, between May 29 and the next 6 months, in my own analysis, is very critical for this country in terms of economic management, because 3 pillars which President Buhari did campaign on in 2014 before he became president, security, economy, as well as corruption, those are still staying. But Tinubu has added to it, I think, job creation as well as some other things that he said he will do concerning infrastructure. So he appointed 8 special advisors yesterday. Let's see how that will go. But like they say in business, it's cautious optimism. It's not uhuru yet. I'm watching. We will definitely be taking you through all the policies of government, not just at the federal or the central government, but also at the states level, because the National Economic Council met yesterday. State governors are part of it. So it is also good that the president is carrying along state governors, no matter the party that it came upon. All right, don't touch that dial. Use this break to join us on all our social media platforms. Start from YouTube at Moneyline with Nancy TV, and we are all other platforms at Moneyline with Nancy. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the program, Moneyline with Nancy it is, and joining me right now is my first guest, Ambassador Adamu, Abdulhamid Adamu. He's joining me from Geneva. He is the WTO, Nigeria's ambassador to the World Trade Organization. Welcome to you, Your Excellency, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Nancy.
How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing fine. Today is African Day, Geneva, so
Oh,
we have big celebration later in the evening.
okay, fantastic.
Yes.
But just before we go for the celebrations, just a few days ago, Nigeria accepted the instrument of the agreement of the WTO on fisheries subsidies. First of all, just before we go into that, can you explain what the fisheries subsidies is about as it concerns the World Trade Organization?
Thank you very much. And before I say anything, let me condole you and condole the AIT team on the passing away of High Chief Dr. Raymond Adequacy. Um, the fisheries subsidy agreement is one of the issues that the WTO members have been negotiating for over 20 years. And just to 2022, the agreement was adopted by ministers at the ministerial conference. The issues involved has to do with a global regulatory framework that the fisheries need to be regulated globally. That particularly has to do with subsidies that contribute to illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing globally. Because it appears, it has proven that most developed countries are giving a lot of subsidies in fishing sector, which invariably is affecting members from the developing world. So that again, the UN had in the U in the global sustainable development mandated the WTO to ensure that the fishery subsidy issues was discussed and probably the members take some decisions. So locally, that thing has been on the table, as I said, until just 2002, that the members agree with part of it because we have two phases. We were unable to agree on the overfishing and overcapacity, which is pending, which will continue. We are discussing it right now, so that before 2024, we'll be able to conclude on that. But in nutshell, what the fishery subsidy is about is to deal with what we call IUU, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing activities. And as you know, the composition of the fishery subsidy agreement in a key definition has to do with the fish, has to do with the fishing activities, has to do with the vessels, has to do with the operators of the vessels. So all this contains certain regulations that globally now that has to be complied with. So any member that is been able to ratify the agreement then is expected after the passing or the entering into force of the agreement, meaning after two-thirds of members, because we have 164 members. So if all the two-thirds are able to submit the instrument of ratification, then the agreement will come into force. Now, let me in a nutshell tell you what this agreement is set for. The agreement is set to new global rule to curb harmful subsidies and protect global fish stocks for all those who rely on it for their livelihood and food security in a manner that also recognizes the need of developing and least developed countries. The agreement will check the rapid depletion of global marine fish stocks occasioned by the overexploitation of marine resources by heavily subsidized large-scale industrial fishers. It is also pertinent to note that as at 2018, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, held that nearly 90% of the world marine fish stocks are now fully exploited, overexploited, or depleted, and that fishery subsidies is a big part of the problem. So according to the economic estimates, government worldwide spent 35 billion US dollars on subsidies in fishing in 2018. So the large majority to enhance capacity, an effort which in many cases means bigger boat to look for fewer fish. So the fishery subsidy marks a major step for an ocean sustainability by prohibiting harmful fishery subsidies, which are a key factor in the widespread depletion of the world fish stocks. So in this case, Nigeria stand to benefit from so many things with this agreement. One, it will foster the sustainable development of Nigeria's fisheries sector and enhance the food and livelihood security, particularly for low-income families in rural and coastal areas of Nigeria. It will also help with a major step toward addressing the current 70 million US dollars plus annual losses to Nigeria due to illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. It will also ensure our small-scale and artisanal fishers are able to exploit and drive benefit from the marine resources in our continental shelf, an exclusive economic zone. Finally, the flexibilities for developing countries will enable Nigeria to subsidize its scale fishers for up to 2 years after entry into force of the agreement. This policy space is not available for developed countries. In a nutshell, this is what I can tell you on the fishery subsidy
Okay.
and the benefit of it to Nigeria.
Yes, in just one question, you've answered a few of the things I want to ask. But
Okay.
yes, but I also want to ask you, since we've accepted that agreement just a few days ago, have you been in communication with perhaps um, the important stakeholders here in Nigeria and perhaps the ministries, for example, perhaps Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Water Resources, Ministry of even Industry and Trade, Industry, Trade and Investment, to see how we can benefit from this agreement with the WTO on fisheries subsidies. That is one. The second part is, what steps do you think that Nigeria can take now, pending when we see a ratification of this agreement? Because the ratification will come when about two-thirds of countries that are members of the WTO sign on it, as it were. So what steps should we take now? And I'm hoping that we should see perhaps close to 100 countries or more than 100, making about two-thirds, sign on this, come on board with the WTO on this fisheries subsidy. So what are the necessary steps that we may begin to take now? And what has been your engagement since this happened in Geneva? I saw that Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was really happy, when you came up and said, okay, Nigeria has signed and we are coming on board with you. She was so happy about that. So talk to me about those two things which I've asked you.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, in the process of the negotiations of this agreement, the stakeholders in Nigeria were carried along, particularly the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, the Fishery Department. They have been the core that we have been consulting, and they have been participating in the meeting along with other stakeholders. In fact, the NIMASA, the Nigerian Navy, and the Fisheries and Agriculture Watch Initiative, and then the Institution of Oceanic Logic in Lagos. So, and other stakeholders. The Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment had been the anchor, the facilitator of this agreement, and in fact, including the Ministry of Justice. So they are fully aware, they have been part and parcel of these processes and the negotiations to the end of the negotiation up to the time of the adoption by the ministers. So having said that, since they are all aware, and of course, even the process of taking the memo to the Federal Executive Council, it was a joint memo between the Federal Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, as well as the Federal Minister of Agriculture. The two ministers presented the memo to the council then. And that is to tell you that all the stakeholders were fully involved. Now it was concluded and signed and submitted. So the next step is to invoke one of the provisions in the agreement, which is institutional arrangement. That institutional arrangement is for the Nigerian government to establish a committee that will facilitate the implementation of that committee, and that will involve all the stakeholders involved. So they are to sit down to work out their action plans and so on. So that is the first step that they need to do. So because it is an all-inclusive agreement, particularly to the fishing sector. So this is what we are expecting them to do. As soon as that is done, we have already reported to the authority. The Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment will facilitate the internal process along with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. And that is what we are first expecting them to do. So when they do that, then we over here, because the agreement has some component of technical assistance and capacity building, because we have noted that the fishery management system that we have, they lack some capacities, which of course, for them to implement the way it is expected, there must be some technical assistance and capacity building. And it is on that basis, the WTO, even the agreement itself, has an article that made a provision for financial mechanisms that will supposed to be used for the developing countries and LDCs to improve their capacity. You know, this agreement, even after this two-thirds of members are able to submit their instrument ratification, it will only come into force. But country like ours, we will have transition period. We have about 2 years after before we could be able to start implementing the agreement. So, and those basic things that the country need through the committee that will be set up. They will identify it, they will provide it to the government, and the government will make it available to us here, and then we will also take it to the WTO. And all those that will be identified that the Nigeria need will be provided so that we can make sure the management is there, working perfectly, and then the tools and the equipment they will require to be able to monitor the marine, the oceans, they have it in place.
How many countries have signed this? Because I didn't get clarity on that. How many
No,
countries have accepted this?
so far, because
Yes.
every country is rushing to be one of the first 10, so
Okay.
Nigeria is lucky to be number 9.
Okay. Okay, Ambassador, are you still there?
I'm here.
Okay, okay. So you said Nigeria is number 9. Can you take me through the other countries that have come on board? Is Ambassador still there? Okay, can you hear me now, Ambassador?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, okay. I was asking
Good.
earlier if you
Yes.
said no, Nigeria is the ninth country that have signed the agreement on fishery subsidies with the WTO. Can you run me through
No,
other
it's not
countries?
signing.
No, that has
It's signing, but
accepted.
yes, that has
Yes,
deposited the
yes,
instrument of
instruments,
ratification.
yes.
Yeah.
Can you run me
Mm.
through other countries that have done that? And you also mentioned earlier that many countries are trying to be in the top 10. Is there any peculiarity? Is there anything? What's the big deal in being among the top 10 countries?
Yes, thank you so much. As I said, let me give little clarification. The signing of the agreement is not the usual bilateral way things will come and sign. The usual process in the WTO is for the entire members, that is, to come together and agree. Once all agree there is no objection by any, then it stands to be adopted, and from there it becomes an agreement agreed by the members of the WTO, and that was what happened as far the fisheries subsidy agreement. Now, the other aspect, as soon as the agreement is adopted, then the next thing to do is for members to go to the national level and then process the instrument of ratification. So once they do that and deposit in the WTO, it means they have accepted the agreement. They also accepted that that agreement should be annexed to the entire WTO agreement. So, and that is what Nigeria has done. And few countries that you said among the first 9 that did are the US, the EU, Seychelles in Africa, the Canada, um, they have submitted the instrument of ratification. So we are the 9. And then in terms of the peculiarity that you asked, whether the first top 10 will have a benefit, of course we'll have, because in the first place, the creative image, good image in the multilateral trading system, it shows that these first 10 countries are the more, they are proactive, they have queue up into the multilateral trading system. And of course, all the trading partners will have that good image for them. And if there is any request for any support, technical assistance or capacity building, being the first, of course, you stand to have those benefits. So that's why countries need to do that expeditiously so that they could be recognized globally, that they have accepted the multilateral system, they are committed, and so on. So they will have that kind of recognition by their trading partners. They will as well um, improve, or rather, their image will also be improved in the international community.
All right.
So, yeah.
All right. At this point, we'll anchor. Thank you very much for joining us today from Geneva. And thank you. Anytime I call upon you, you always answer. And I wish us well, as it were. And I
Thank
hope
you
that
very
other
much.
countries can come on board quickly, so that at least
Exactly.
two-thirds of the 164 members, so it can be solidified. Thank you very much, Ambassador.
Thank you. I also want to tell you, Nancy,
Yeah.
that in that 2002, when we concluded the negotiation on the fishery subsidy and the agreement was
That you mean
adopted by all ministers,
2022, not 2002, 2022.
2022,
Yes.
in June to be
Yes.
precise,
Yes.
2022
22.
in
Yeah.
Geneva during the ministerial conference. It was held
MC12.
in
Yeah.
Geneva, ministers were there, and then it was one of the agreement that concluded the negotiation and adopted. So there is one segment that was not agreed upon on overfishing and overcapacity, and other some component of what we call special and differential treatment. So those ones are now going to be in the second wave.
Okay.
So the mandate given by ministers is to be able to discuss and negotiate on them, and then to present it to them at MC13, which is coming up in Abu Dhabi in February 2024. So before then, we'll be able to conclude this second wave, and then we present it. And once it's adopted, then it will be matched with this particular one.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you as
Thank you.
always. All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. I've been speaking with Ambassador Abdulhamid Adamu. We've been talking about the fisheries as subsidy.